Oh, hi. Welcome to the After Hours Entrepreneur. If you missed last week's Clubhouse room, that's okay. I've got your back. Today, we're talking all about podcasting, and we're going to start by talking about how you can get more shares and more momentum and more growth out of your podcast. And then in the second half of the program, we're going to talk about how to land sponsors for your podcast. Basically, how you can start making money on your podcast. If that sounds interesting, smash the like, hit subscribe. Let's get into the episode. Last week's episode went long, by the way, so this week I'm going to try to hit 7 topics, 2 minutes apiece. Let's see if I can do it. Let's go. Have you noticed that your podcast has started to go stale? You're not seeing increases in new followers and new listeners? Well, there's some things you can do to keep your show lively and to make sure you're always attracting new audiences. First off, don't be afraid to try something new. If you haven't hopped on Facebook audio or Clubhouse, check it out. Try it out. You've never posted a TikTok, try it out. Keep trying new things. I like to say dedicate 20% of time to trying new things, 80% to what's already working. And speaking of which, that brings us to our second point on this topic. Look back at old posts and old episodes. What episodes are very popular and which episodes just fell flat? We had a guest who was talking about how some of his episodes that went political didn't do so well, and the episodes that did not go political tend to do well. So we recommended, quite simply, just avoid the political topics. And if a guest is coming on, just tell them beforehand, we try to avoid politics. That doesn't resonate with our audience. Everyone will understand. The other thing that I would recommend if you find that your podcast is falling flat is assess all the things that you're focused on. It's pretty easy as After Hours entrepreneurs to be focused on so many different things, too many different things for our brain to really get focused and clear as to what our value proposition is. So again, if you're having a hard time, if your show is falling flat, it's feeling stale, try focusing on what it is you do best. And I think you'll be impressed with what happens next. So the next topic I want to touch on is Clubhouse and how you can actually leverage Clubhouse to grow your podcast. There's a lot of different ways you can do this. I'm just going to hit on a half dozen or so that I think will help you out. So first off, you can use a program like Club Deck, which is free and basically allows you to be a little bit more organized. It gives you more data, more information on who's in your room. So Club Deck is a good way of leveraging Clubhouse for your podcast growth. Another idea might be to stream previous episodes of your podcast. You already had a great guest on your podcast. Try streaming them straight to Clubhouse. It doesn't take any of your time, but it still allows you to provide value to your audience. I would also encourage you to tweak your bio. You know, in Clubhouse, there's a lot of different types of rooms that you're going to be in. Try tweaking your bio based on the rooms that you're going to be in. If you're going to be in a LinkedIn room, make sure that you're focusing on the LinkedIn audience in your bio. If you're in a podcasting room, focus on podcasting and so on and so forth. Just make sure you have a few bios that are ready to go, depending on the types of rooms that you're frequenting. And by the way, don't be afraid to host your own rooms. One of the best ways of growing on Clubhouse is to actually create, grow, and host your own rooms. And furthermore, you might think about trying to team up with large clubs that already fit your niche, that have your audience. Try teaming up with those clubs. Because if you can host rooms in those clubs, you're going to be able to reach a lot more people that you wouldn't have had access to already. Because now the club is going to be alerting their members automatically through Clubhouse when you're hosting a room in the club. So make sure to collaborate with big clubs. Oh yeah, and I almost forgot. Make sure that you're collaborating with other great hosts. I think this is probably the best way to grow on Clubhouse is to collaborate with other great hosts. And then you've got a strong bio, you've got a strong call to action. People will find their way to your podcast as long as you're clear. Be clear, please be clear. I love this saying from Sean Cannell. I heard him say this the other day in Clubhouse. If you confuse, you lose. So don't confuse clients and listeners as to what you do or what you'd like them to do. Give them one strong call to action and stay clear on that. So let's take this to the next level. You're collaborating. How can we leverage collaborations to grow our podcast? A great way to pick up new listeners is to be a guest on other people's podcasts. But should you go on everyone's podcast? I don't think so. So let's talk about the right types of podcasts for you to be on. First off, you want to make sure that you know the audience that they're speaking to. If you're in the cooking niche and they're in the snowboarding niche, it doesn't make sense to collaborate. You're in different niches. So this sounds obvious, but I think it's important that you ask up front, who do you speak to? Who is your audience? And then make sure that there's an overlap there. And this goes both ways, both for you guesting on other people's podcasts, but also for other people guesting on your show. I also like to see how long the podcast has been around. If they're in their first 10 episodes, it's probably not going to be worth your time because they're so new to the game. Now, there might be exceptions to that, but I typically like to look for a podcast that's been around for at least 50 episodes, just so I know that this show is going to keep going and people are going to continue to listen to it. If you're serious about getting on this podcast, you need a way to break through their gatekeeper. So a great way of doing that is referencing and being very specific about something that they've done and you really liked. For example, that could be a recent episode that they recorded that you really liked, or an image that you really liked, maybe a poll, but be very specific about something they've done that you really liked and that you might be able to interject more value on top of that. This could be a good way to make sure that they answer your email and potentially give you a chance to be on the show. The other challenge that I have is getting guests to actually share. Have you ever experienced this problem before? You go to all this trouble to bring on a great guest onto your podcast and they don't even share. Super frustrating, right? Here are some ways that you can convince guests to share your podcast episode with their communities. So one option that I had success with Pat Flynn was after the episode, I reached out to him and said, "Hey, Pat, I loved having you on the podcast. Do you mind if we share this with your community?" So AKA, I'll give you a digital asset, an image, and then you will share it with the link on your Facebook page. And then I'll pay to have your post boosted. So I'm boosting out a post with a link with his name, his face, his approval on, and he's boosting it out to everyone that already know, likes, and trust him, and then more people. This is a great way that you can leverage a big guest to reach more people. If it's a great interview or a great episode, you might also say to the guest, "Hey, I'll send you the entire media file. Would you be interested in sharing this with your audience?" That's a great way of getting double the value. It's value for them. They have new content. It's value for you because now you're reaching a new audience. You might even schedule an Instagram live with that person. Schedule it early, and then when the episode goes live, when the episode can actually be listened to, do a quick live video collaboration with the guest, and you can kind of talk about it, drum up some interest in the conversations that are had within the episode itself. I also recommend making it as easy as possible on your guest to share. Send them one link. Don't send them 10 links of all the different assets. Send them one link that they can share, and send them some digital assets, maybe some photos or some videos, some WAV files, whatever you got. Share some assets with them so they can easily share it. Make it simple. And furthermore, when you're asking them to share, set up some sort of smart link or deep link. Use a platform like URL Genie. That way, when someone actually follows their link and lands on your show, it automatically logs them into that platform, whether it's Spotify or iTunes or YouTube, automatically logs them in. It makes it much easier for them to subscribe and follow you. All right. So we talked a lot about how to grow our podcast. And what we also need to do with our podcast is find ways to monetize it. One of the great ways to monetize your show is through sponsorships. And this week, Mario Armstrong just came in and gave a clinic. So I want to share some of his top takeaways on how you can land an awesome brand sponsor for your podcast. Step one to landing a brand sponsor for your podcast is writing down a list of all the brands that you use, that you enjoy, and that have an overlap with the demographic and psychographic that you speak to. For example, I'm talking into a Canon camera right now. I might reach out to Canon for potential brand sponsorship. So take a minute, write down all the different brands that you might want to work with. Then go to these brands' social media sites, websites, etc., and see what are they doing? What's the style that they like to work in? Is this something that I can replicate? Is this something that would be a good fit for my audience? Make sure that there's good synergy there. As you create content that might have some similarities, tag them. Try finding ways to reach out and connect with them just by providing them value through tagging, through commenting, things like that. This is a good way to start to show up on the radar of that potential sponsor. So now that you've kind of determined the sponsor you want to work with and you're starting to implement some of the strategies, how do you actually get them on the phone? And Mario laid down a great framework for getting a sponsor on the show. So here's the drill. You're going to go to Instagram and you're going to go to that sponsors page. You want to look at all the people that brand is following. Now, where's the overlap? Is there anyone on that list of people that they follow that you are connected with, someone that you might know? Once you find a few names, what you want to do is you want to reach out to that person, that mutual contact, and you're going to use them as a bridge. I mean, you're going to reach out and say, "Hey, I'm trying to get connected with the chief marketing officer over at Canon. Can you connect me? Can you hook me up?" And you might get a lot of no's, but eventually you're going to get a yes. And then, my friend, that is the best way to find your sponsor. I just love that tip. I think it's just absolutely spectacular because all these big brands, all these big companies, they have gatekeepers in place. And if you aren't able to get past the gatekeeper, if you're not able to get to the decision maker, you're just wasting everyone's time. Most importantly, your time. So I love this idea of finding someone that's a mutual connection. You could leverage this on LinkedIn and on Instagram, Facebook. There's a lot of different platforms that share who your mutual connections are, who your mutual contacts are. And by leveraging those mutual contacts, you can level up and keep building your platform to better sponsors. Listen, I hope you love this episode. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. There are fresh episodes coming to you every week, multiple times a week. And also make sure that you're in Clubhouse, baby. Clubhouse, 10 a.m. Eastern every Saturday. I'm Mark Savant. You've been listening to the After Hours Entrepreneur. We help you create a better content in less time. So go out, be awesome, and I will catch you next time. Peace.